Chapters 37 and 38 of Her Mother's Secret. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Bridget Gage. Chapter 37. Leonidas and Odalite again. Leonidas arose on the morning of Christmas Eve with one thought predominant in his mind. He should see Odalite, see her for the first time since that eventful day when her marriage with Angus Anglesea was broken at the altar. How would she appear? How would she receive him? Would she consider his friendly and most delicate advance an intrusion? He could not answer this question to himself. Was she really reconciled to her fate, or was she only, from a sense of honor and duty, repressing her emotions? He could not judge. Her mother had told him that she was better in health and brighter in spirits than she had been for many weeks. Was this real or assumed on her part? He did not know, but he felt sure that he should discover the truth when he should see her. Now that the villain who had come between them was entirely out of the way, forever and forever out of the way, there need be no reserve, no false shows, between hearts which had never ceased to trust each other, though hers might have ceased to love. Full of these anxious speculations, Le dressed himself and went downstairs to the parlor, where all the family and friends assembled before breakfast. There he found them all, standing around the fire and chatting merrily while waiting for the bell to ring. He gave them all a general good morning as he entered the room. And then he saw Odalite. She separated herself from the group around the fire, came to meet him, placed both her hands in his, and smiled. The floors seemed to rock under Le's feet like the deck of a ship on the ocean, so great was his emotion. Why, this was the first time he had seen her smile since he had returned from sea. And now she smiled frankly up in his face, just as she used to do before he went away. And oh, to him that smile seemed the promise of all blessed possibilities in the future. "Good morning, Le," she said, in the old, natural tone that he had not heard for 3 years. "We are just talking about having in the fiddlers to-night for the children to dance, and sending for little Rosemary Hedge and the Grandiere girls and boys, and your particular friend, Roland Bayard. But, Le, we will have to send the brake all around to collect them to-day. Will you go, Le?" "Go! Go!" said Le, a little confused by his surprise and delight at seeing Odalite so cheerful. "Go! I will go anywhere in this world, or do anything on earth you wish, Odalite." "That's my Le! I knew you would. So now, dear father," she said, turning to Mr. Force, "you need not go in person, nor send a servant on such a very delicate errand as an impromptu invitation." "It is sudden," admitted Le. "Oh, yes. You see, the poor, dear children always have had their Christmas Eve dance as long back as they can remember, and their friends were always invited several days beforehand. But this year, on account of the late disturbance there, I will not allude to it again. Nothing was said about the dance until this morning, when I proposed it." "You, Odalite?" "Yes, I. Why should the dear children not have their annual dance? But it is so suddenly, and some people, as a mere matter of detail, the Grandieres, are such sticklers for etiquette that they might choose to consider an impromptu invitation an impertinence, unless it was given in the most particular manner, as by a member of the family going in person to fetch the invited guests. You understand?" "Yes, I understand," said Le, smiling broadly with delight. The sound of the breakfast bell put an end to the conversation, and the whole party filed away to the breakfast table. Immediately after breakfast Le set out in the brake, a large, capacious covered cart, or carriage, capable of holding a dozen people, and drawn by 2 strong draft horses. Odalite mingled freely with the family that day, taking part in all the preparations for the evening dance, and entering with ready interest into all the children's schemes of enjoyment. "Oh, isn't it jolly to have the house all to ourselves!" exclaimed Wynnette, who, mounted on the top of a stepladder, was engaged in twining the mistletoe in and out among the branches of the chandelier that hung from the center of the ceiling. "It is awfully jolly. I mean it is truly comfortable to have that scalawag I mean that colonel away. Odalite, I hope you won't take it amiss, but I don't mind telling you that I always felt crowded, not only while he was in the house, but even when he was in the country. And oh, I know I should feel as if I had ever so much more room if he was off the face of this earth, in some other planet of some other solar system." Odalite looked all around the drawing room, and seeing that she was alone with her next sister, whispered: "And I don't mind telling you, Wynnette, if you will keep it a profound secret, that I entirely share your feelings." "Oh, oh, oh! So them's your sentiments. I mean, these are your feelings. Well, I thought so. But to hear you say it!" exclaimed Wynnette. "Do not speak of it to any one, dear," said Odalite. "Why not? I should be proud to proclaim it on the housetop." "Because, dear, no one could understand. They would think me a lunatic." "Oh, and you don't mind telling me because I understand and will think you sensible?" "Not to any extravagant extent, I don't, though. I have not considered you just level I mean compos mentis since you consented to marry that officer. Hush! Here comes Jake." The negro entered with an armful of holly, and the work went on in silence. By noon all the decorations were completed, the litter of leaves gathered up, and the carpet covered with a tightly drawn linen cloth for the feet of the dancers. The family took an early dinner, and dressed to receive their juvenile company, who were expected to begin to arrive in the afternoon. Mrs. Anglesea, whose trunk came that morning from Forest Rest, arrayed herself gorgeously in a crimson brocaded satin, trimmed with black lace, necklace and bracelets of heavy California gold, and a brooch and earrings of burning carbuncles. "None o' your pale, sick pearls, or icy, chilly diamonds for me. I like gems with fire and color in 'em, I do!" she exclaimed, as she drew on a pair of yellow kid gloves over her plump hands and sailed out of her room, to the great admiration of Luce, who was looking on. The ladies of the family made some difference in their usual home dress. Mrs. Force wore a navy blue silk, with some fine lace on her neck and wrists, and no jewelry. Odalite wore a white cashmere, trimmed with white satin, a pearl necklace and earrings. Wynnette and Elva wore their bridesmaids' dresses, with a difference, Wynnette with a coral necklace and earrings, and Elva with a turquoise set. Miss Meeke wore a brown silk dress, with cameo ornaments. They were all assembled in the parlor by 5 o'clock, waiting for their guests, who came a few minutes later. First came the brake, driven by Le, and loaded with little people presided over by one big one. They scrambled and tumbled out in a hurry, and ran pell-mell into the open door of the hall, where the girls were received with rapture by Wynnette and Elva, who took them upstairs to a well-warmed spare room, where they could lay off their wraps. The boys were conducted by Le to his own room, to take off their mufflers and to brush their hair. The simple toilets of the young people took but a short time to arrange, and in 15 minutes from the time of their arrival they all filed into the drawing room and paid their respects to their host and hostess. It was now 5:30, and growing dark outdoors. There was no gas at Mondreer, but there were fine, large chandeliers in every room, and these were all fitted with wax candles, just lighted. 3 very large chandeliers, with quite a grove of wax candles, hung from the ceiling, and filled the drawing room with a mellow light that showed off to the best advantage the youthful beauty assembled there. Besides the 3 lovely Force girls, there were the Grandiers, Sophy, Nancy, Polly, and Peggy, 4 blooming lasses of ages ranging from 10 to 14, and bearing to each other so strong a family likeness that they may collectively be described as plump, fair, rosy, blue-eyed, and brown-haired. They all wore bright blue merino dresses, trimmed with swansdown, and white carnelian necklaces. With them were their brothers, Ned and Sam, 2 fine, well-groomed lads, respectively 15 and 16 years of age, rosy, blue-eyed, and brown-haired like their sisters. These 2 handsome lads, after making their bows to Mr. and Mrs. Force, went to find Wynnette and Elva, to engage them for the first dance, to be in good time, although the negro fiddlers had not yet taken their places. CHAPTER XXXVIII. An Old-Time Christmas Dance. "Where is Rosemary Hedge?" inquired Odalite, as soon as she could get a chance to speak to Le. "She is coming. Oh, she would not miss it. Roland Bayard is to bring her on, with her Aunt Susanna and Miss Sibby." "With those grown people? Why, how is that? Not but what we shall be very glad to see them, you know." "Of course. I know that, or I shouldn't have asked them." "Oh, Le, you know you can always ask whoever you please to this house. You know it, Le." "Oh, yes, of course I do. I only meant to say that I would not have asked those 2 ladies if I had not known that they would be welcome. But I am going to tell how it was that I did ask them." "Yes, very well." "You see, I went to Grandieres first, and gave the pressing invitation, and I tell you the young ones jumped at it. They did not keep me waiting long while they got ready, and girls and boys soon tumbled up into the brake." "Yes, I will warrant that they did," said Odalite. "Then I drove on to Grove Hill, where I found Miss Sibby spending the day. Roland had just brought her there in their mule wagon. I gave my message. There was a great meeting and great excitement between the Grandiers and the Elks." Rosemary and her little cousins, Ernie and Melly, were wild to come; but the stately Miss Susannah declared that they could not go without a chaperon. So I invited her; then I could not 'make a bridge over Miss Sibby's nose,' so I invited her also." "I am very glad you did," said Odalite. "But all was not settled yet. Miss Grandiere declared that she and her nieces were not ready, and could not get ready for an hour to come; and besides that, the addition of 5 more passengers to the 7 we already had in the break would crowd us too much and be too heavy a load, even for our strong draft horses to draw so long a way over such rough roads." "And that last was an undeniable fact." "Of course it was. So I offered to take my party on, and return later for the others. But Miss Grandiere urged that that would be too late for them." "She was right again." "Certainly; but then Roland came to the rescue, and offered to drive the second party over here in the mule cart, and so it was settled that he should do so. While we were talking, Mrs. Elk came in, and of course I had to invite her." "She never goes out in the evening," said Odalite. "No, of course not; and so she explained, and we excused her. And there they all come now. I hear the cart. I must go and see to them." "And I, too," said Odalite, "must go and take the ladies and children upstairs." And the young pair left the room together to receive the visitors, who had by this time entered the hall. "Ah, this is just as it should be," said Miss Grandiere to Miss Bayard, as they saw Leonidas and Odalite approaching together. "Yes, and a heap better than it might have been. If you knew as much as I do, you would say so, too." "What do you mean?" inquired Miss Grandiere, in a low voice. "Hush! Here they are," whispered Miss Bayard, as the two young people came up, with outstretched hands and eager voices to welcome the visitors. "You are in very good time. The dancing has not yet commenced," said Odalite, after the first greetings were passed. "It is not yet 7 o'clock," added Le. And Odalite took off the 2 ladies and the 3 children to the warm dressing room to lay off their wraps, while Le carried off Roland to his own den, to brush his hair. "My dear Odalite, I am so glad to see you looking so well," said Miss Grandiere, when they had reached the chamber. "I haven't seen her looking so bright for weeks, and that is right, sez I," added Miss Sibby. "Thank you. Everybody tells me that," said Odalite, smiling. Miss Grandiere was dressed in a rich black silk, with a white lace fichu and white lace cuffs, and her black hair was plaited and wound into a roll at the top of her head and fastened with a very high back comb. Her front hair was divided in the middle and wound into curls, 2 down each temple. Miss Sibby wore a plain black silk and a book muslin cap, with a full lace border and white satin bows and strings. The 2 little Elk girls, aged 10 and 12, were slender, dark eyed, dark haired, red cheeked lasses, dressed in the most brilliant of Scotch plaids, with neatly crimped muslin ruffles around their throats and wrists, and amber necklaces and bracelets. But Rosemary Hedge's dress was the quaintest costume that the law of society allowed. It was a sage green velvet, made out of one of Miss Grandiere's own old fashioned gowns, and decorated all around the bottom of the skirt, the belt, the sleeves, and the neck with crimson cypress vines, blue forget me nots, and yellow crocuses, worked by Miss Grandiere's own fingers. Rosemary wore no trinkets, her only ornament being her blue black hair curled in ringlets all around her pretty head. When the visitors were ready to go down, Odalite conducted them to the drawing room, where now, at one end, the negro musicians were seated on chairs raised upon a long, broad bench, and were beginning to tune their instruments, preparatory to playing up an inspiring quadrille tune. As soon as Mrs. Anglesea saw the newcomers, she made a dash across the room at them, and accosted them with effusion. "So glad to see you all! And there's my gay, young sailor lad! Mind you, Roland Bayard, I won't take you away from the young uns all the time, because it is their party, but you must manage to give me half a dozen dances during the evening," she said. "With the greatest pleasure, Mrs. Anglesea," said the gallant tar, "though I didn't know that you danced." "Thought I was too large and heavy, eh? Well, I may be large, but I ain't heavy. A balloon is large, but it is light. I am also large, but I am light on my feet. You shall see." "Well, will you give me the pleasure of your hand in this set?" he inquired. "You bet!" she replied, placing her plump, yellow gloved hand in his. He led her to the head of the quadrille that was just forming. Miss Meeke and young Dr. Ingle, who had just "happened in," and been prevailed upon to stay, stood up together vis a vis to the California lady and her partner. They were the head and foot couples. Ned Grandiere and Wynnette were on the right. Sam Grandiere and Elva were on the left. This was the form of the first set in the front half of the drawing room. Mr. Force led Miss Grandiere to the head of another set at the back of the long room. Leonidas took Miss Sibby, who adored dancing, to the foot. Odalite stood with Erna Elk on the right hand, and Mrs. Force with Millie Elk on the left hand. And the two included the whole company, with the exception of Rosemary Hedge and the four Grandiere girls. The music struck up the favorite, old fashioned "Coquette," and the dance began. And oh, Terpsichore, how the lady from Wild Cats' did foot it away! And she danced well, only, perhaps, just a little too vigorously for good taste. The "Coquette" was followed by the "Basket," and then by "Malbrook," and lastly by the "Fire Brigade," which finished the set. When Mrs. Anglesea, out of breath with her great exertions, was being led to her seat by her handsome young partner, she passed Miss Sibby, who was sitting in an armchair, actively fanning herself with a hand screen. Too bad, indeed," said the lady from the mines, with more good nature than discretion. "Too bad that you should have to dance, at your age, to make up a set." "What's that you say?" demanded Miss Sibby, with much spirit. "Me dance to make up a set, when all them 5 young gals was waiting? Me? Why, 'oman, I dote on dancing. I think it's heavenly, perfectly heavenly. It ought to be a lawful part of worship, sez I." "Oh, if that's your sort, I have no more to say. I only thought you looked kind o' played out and done for, that's all," said Mrs. Anglesea. "It does sort o' try one's breath, but it is heavenly, for all that. Perfectly heavenly. And I mean to dance the next set, too, if I can only get a partner." In other parts of the room other talk was going on. "Odalite," said Leonidas, "will you give me the next dance?" "Certainly, I will, Le. I would have given you the first one, only I wanted you to dance with Miss Sibby." "Well, I obeyed you, and danced with her." "You did not find it hard, did you?" "I found it funny. Oh! Miss Wynnette," said young Edward Grandiere, "will you be so very good as to give me this next dance, also?" "Not if I know it. I mean, thank you very much, but I hope you will do me the favor of asking one of the Misses Elk to dance with you. I intend to put on Le's cap and be a gentleman, and ask one of your sisters to dance with me." "Why, Miss Wynnette, how strange!" "There's no help for it. There are not gentlemen enough in the company, so I must be one. Why, just see! Here are 14 ladies and only 7 gentlemen, and always about the same proportion in this neighborhood, whether it be a ball, or a dinner party, or a tea drinking, or a little dance like this. It is always the same, about twice as many ladies as gentlemen. Oh, I don't know what is to become of us all, unless we go out as missionaries to the heathen," sighed Wynnette. "You must not go. I beg you will stay and take care of one poor heathen," said the boy, trying his boyish best to be gallant. "Maybe I will. Stay and take care of poor old Governor Broadvalley, who has gout in his great toe, and infidelity in his brain, and neither wife nor child to make him a poultice, or read him a sermon," said Wynnette, as she sprang up and left the side of her partner. "Rosemary, darling, will you dance this set with me? I wished so much to dance the first set with you, but " Roland Bayard, who was the speaker, paused, and Rosemary finished the sentence for him. "You were caught and carried away captive by a gay lady, and what could a gentleman do?" she asked, smiling. "Will you dance this set with me, then, darling child?" he repeated. "With real pleasure, Roland," she answered, giving him her hand. And he led her out. In the sets that were now forming, the Grandiere girls, as well as all the other children, danced, and all the grown women sat down, except Miss Sibby, who conscripted Mr. Force to dance with her. Wynnette, as a gentleman, led out the youngest Miss Grandiere. And the 2 sets being complete, the music struck up, the dancing commenced. And all went merry as a marriage bell. The dancing concluded with the rollicking merry-go-round, called in these days the Virginia Reel, but in the olden times known as Sir Roger de Coverly, in which all hands, men, women and children, young and old, joined heartily, and none more heartily than Miss Sibby. "Enjoy yourself as long as you can, sez I," she hastily whispered into the ear of Le, as he whirled her around in the giddy maelstrom of that mad dance. At 10 o'clock the fiddlers had to rest their elbows and the banjo players to their hands, when they were marched off to the kitchen to partake of good Christmas cheer. In the parlor the guests were seated in somewhat stiff and formal rows, on sofas and chairs ranged along the wall, while 2 men servants, Jake and Jerry, bearing large trays of refreshments, made the circuit of the room. Jerry going first, with a great plum cake and plain pound cake, each beautifully frosted and decorated, and neatly cut from the center to the edge, ready for helping, and a pile of small china plates and damask napkins. Le Force, walking beside this waiter, served each guest with a plate, a napkin, and a slice of each cake. Behind Jerry came Jake, bearing another large tray laden with cut glass goblets filled to the brim with snowy, frothy eggnog, or amber apple toddy, or golden lemon punch. And beside this waiter walked Mr. Force, serving each guest with the special nectar he or she preferred. When these good things had been disposed of, although it was but 10:30, carriages were ordered, and all the county neighbors took leave and went home, for these were simple days before the war, or befo' de wo, as the negroes more truly, if less grammatically, put it. And the people wished to get home and go to bed, that they might rise on Christmas morning in time to attend church in the forenoon. Within an hour after their departure the household at Mondreer had retired to rest. CHAPTER XXXIX.